The champagne glass slipped from the CEO's hand and shattered across the marble floor. Nobody moved. He stared at the single mom standing in front of him, his voice barely audible. "Am I too old for you?" She looked at him for a long second. Then she answered quietly, "No, but I think you're afraid I'll leave before you get the chance to be yourself." His face changed because somehow a woman he had met less than an hour ago had just named the fear he had spent 10 years hiding. It had started at a charity dinner in Chicago. Sarah Mitchell hadn't even wanted to attend. She was a 43-year-old elevator mechanic, a widow raising her 9-year-old daughter, Emma, in a small apartment on the south side. Her week had been brutal. 2 broken elevators, 1 unpaid medical bill from years ago, a daughter who had recently started asking questions about why other kids had fathers, and she didn't. But Emma had insisted she go. "Mom, you promised you'd try one new thing this month." So Sarah had borrowed a dark dress from her sister and walked into a ballroom filled with people who seemed to belong to another universe. That was where she met Nathan Reid, 46, CEO of a rapidly growing construction technology company. Elegant, intelligent, and surrounded by people who laughed slightly too loudly at everything he said. Sarah didn't know who he was. That was exactly what caught his attention. When she mentioned her company, he simply nodded. "Sounds like you have a lot of elevators." He laughed. It was the first genuine laugh he'd had that evening. For 20 minutes, they talked without pretending. Sarah told him about Emma's obsession with astronomy. Nathan admitted he had never learned to identify a single constellation. Then came the first surprise. Nathan wasn't supposed to be there either. He had only come because his late father's foundation was honoring him that night. "He built the company," he said quietly. "I just inherited the expectations." Sarah noticed something in his expression. "You don't sound proud of that." "I am." He looked down. "I'm just tired of being proud all the time." Before she could answer, a man from Nathan's board approached and whispered something urgently in his ear. Nathan's shoulders stiffened. The man glanced at Sarah. "Your meeting starts in 10 minutes. Nathan nodded. Sarah understood immediately. She stepped back. "You should go." Nathan looked surprised. "You're not offended." "Why would I be? Most people are." Sarah smiled faintly. "I've got a daughter waiting for me at home. That keeps things in perspective." That should have been the end of it. But Nathan followed her outside. The cold Chicago wind pushed against them as they stood beneath the hotel awning. "I hate that I'm doing this," he admitted. "Doing what?" "Leaving." Sarah looked at him. "You're allowed to leave." He smiled sadly. "People usually tell me to stay." Then he did something unexpected. He asked for her number. Not because he was CEO. Not because she was impressed by him. Because for the first time in years, someone had made him feel like a person instead of a position. 2 weeks passed. They met for coffee, then breakfast, then a walk along the river. Nathan met Emma by accident at a small neighborhood bookstore. Emma immediately asked him, "Are you my mom's boyfriend?" Sarah nearly dropped the book in her hand. Nathan laughed so hard he had to cover his mouth. But then Emma looked at him seriously. "You don't look happy enough." Nathan blinked. "What?" "My mom says people smile with their eyes when they're really happy." Sarah stared at her daughter. "I never said that." "Yes, you did." Nathan smiled. But later, sitting alone in his car, that little girl's words stayed with him because Nathan realized something terrifying. He was becoming attached not to Sarah's life, to the ordinary pieces of it, the grocery lists, the broken toaster, Emma's school drawings, Sarah falling asleep during movies because she worked too much. Things Nathan had spent years convincing himself he didn't need. Then came the second twist. Sarah received an offer from a maintenance company in Seattle. Better salary, better hours, enough money to finally give Emma the life she thought she deserved. She didn't tell Nathan immediately. She was afraid he would see it as a rejection. Instead, Nathan discovered it from Emma. "You're moving?" he asked Sarah later. "Maybe." Nathan went silent. "So that's it." Sarah frowned. "What do you mean? You found something better and you're leaving?" His expression hardened. "It's a job, Nathan." "No, it's an escape." That hurt because it was partly true. Sarah had spent 5 years rebuilding her life after her husband died. She had learned never to depend too heavily on anyone, especially someone who could disappear. Nathan had his own fear. Sarah could lose someone all over again. Nathan had never allowed himself to love anyone enough to risk losing them. They argued quietly. No shouting, just 2 adults saying the wrong things because the right ones were too frightening. Sarah left. 3 days later, Nathan's company suffered a major setback. A critical project collapsed after a subcontractor falsified safety reports. The board demanded that Nathan take responsibility. For the first time, he wasn't certain he could. Then Sarah called, not to offer business advice, not to save his company. She had heard about the accident and simply asked, "Are you okay?" Nathan closed his office door. "I don't know." There was silence. Then Sarah said, "You don't have to know tonight. Those 7 7 words broke something inside him because everyone else wanted solutions. Sarah was the first person who gave him permission to be scared. But the biggest surprise came the next morning. Nathan discovered that Sarah had been investigating the failed project herself. Years earlier, before becoming an elevator mechanic, she had worked in industrial safety inspections. She had noticed something in the reports. The subcontractor hadn't simply falsified documents. Someone inside Nathan's company had ignored multiple warnings to protect the launch deadline. Sarah handed Nathan the evidence. He stared at her. "You could have used this for what? To make me owe you." Sarah shook her head. "I don't want you to owe me." "Then why help?" She looked toward the city outside his office. "Because when someone you care about is drowning, you don't ask what you'll get for throwing them a rope." Nathan couldn't speak. That evening, he found Sarah waiting outside the school where Emma attended a science club. He walked toward her slowly. "I turned down the board's recommendation," he said. Sarah nodded. "And I withdrew from Seattle." Nathan stopped. "Why?" She looked at him. "Because I realized I wasn't running toward a better life." A pause. "I was running away from another loss." Nathan's eyes filled. Then he whispered the question that had been haunting him. "Am I too old for you?" Sarah stepped closer. "No." He looked down. She continued. "You're not too old. You're just finally old enough to know what you don't want to waste anymore." Nathan looked at her. "And what do you think that is?" "Time." He smiled through tears. "I thought you'd say love." Sarah smiled back. "Love isn't the thing we run out of first." She reached for his hand. "We run out of courage." 6 months later, Nathan didn't magically become less busy. Sarah didn't magically become fearless. And Emma didn't suddenly stop missing her father. But something changed. Nathan started showing up. Not as a CEO, as Nathan. He attended Emma's science fair and cheered louder than anyone. Sarah still fixed elevators at 6 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes Nathan waited for her afterward with 2 coffees. They built nothing perfect. They built something real. And one evening, Emma looked at the two of them sitting on the apartment balcony beneath a clear sky. She pointed upward. "That's Orion." Nathan looked surprised. "You learned that?" Emma smiled. "No, Mom taught me." Sarah laughed. Nathan leaned against her shoulder. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was falling behind. He felt like he had finally arrived. Because sometimes love doesn't ask whether you're young enough, rich enough, successful enough, or ready enough. Sometimes it simply asks whether you're brave enough to stop running. And Sarah's answer changed Nathan's life for one simple reason. She didn't promise him forever. She reminded him that he was still worthy of it.